gonna do it. The Dueling Cavalier is now a musical. Hot dog! Hallelujah! Fellas, I feel this is my lucky day, March 23rd.
Oh, no, your lucky day is the 24th.
What do you mean the 24th?
It's 1:30 already. It's morning.
Yes, and what a lovely morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
We've talked the whole night through.
Good morning.
Good morning to you. Good morning. Good morning. It's great to stay up late. Good morning. Good morning
To you.
When the band began to play, the stars were shining bright.
Now the milkman's on his way. It's too late to say goodnight. So
Good morning.
Good morning.
we've talked the whole night through.
Good morning.
Good morning to you.
Morning. Good morning. We've gabbed the whole night through. Good morning. Good morning to
Nothing
you.
could be grander than to be in Louisiana
In the morning.
Good morning.
We've talked the whole night through.
Good morning.
Good morning to you.
Hello, 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 hello. It's just gone midnight and you are listening to EastLine Insomnia. I'm Nicole Saban.
Hey everyone, I'm Dan Higgins.
Good morning to those of you listening live. Good morning to those of you who wake up early in the morning and instead listen to us then.
Hello, Ali Cantor. Good morning, Ali Cantor.
We love your comments in the morning too, and we will discuss them next week should you leave any.
Yeah, absolutely. As well, good morning to you, Nicole Saban.
Good morning to you, Daniel Higgins.
How are you doing this morning?
I'm doing okay this morning. It's only been morning for 3 minutes now, but
Oh yeah, that's true.
I have to say Debbie always gets me in the mood. Thank you for playing Debbie.
Of course.
Nothing like Debbie Reynolds to get me hyped for it to be midnight and talking about theater, because what else would we talk about at midnight, Dan?
That's literally our lives. Our lives are theater, so that's why we're here.
Conversation. We closed the space and wanted a space where we would talk about theater at midnight, and instead we decided let us do that virtually. Talk about
For everyone here.
Mm-hmm. So hello everyone. Do we have anybody tuning in tonight? Leave a comment down below, or you can always tweet us at EastLine Theater if you would like to get in touch with us. We'd love to share your comments live on air and judge your opinions. Did you see today's big theater news, Dan?
No, I did not. What is today's big theater?
Today's big theater news is coming in the new year, a Spanish language production of Company starring Antonio Banderas as Bobby.
Are you kidding?
Do you know what the central event in Company is?
Yes, I know what the central event in Company is.
I believe it's somebody's birthday, right?
Yeah, I believe Bobby is turning 35.
Do you know how old Antonio Banderas recently turned?
I do not know how old Antonio Banderas is. I'm sorry.
Well, let me tell you, I Googled it. Antonio Banderas is 60 this year.
He's not 60. I don't believe that.
Well, I have to say, he doesn't look 60, but he also doesn't look 35.
I don't buy that. Come on. Let's see a picture. Come on. Get him out, Nicole. Come on.
Let me Google.
Go. Come on. You know the feature. Do the thing.
While
Nicole gets us
Antonio
a photo.
Banderas 2020.
While Nicole gets us a photo of Antonio Banderas, tonight's big topic is going to be Shakespeare, guys. We're going to talk about the Bard tonight, specifically Shakespeare during COVID and Shakespeare and the sort of consciousness of theater. It's going to be a great conversation. We hope you'll join us by leaving us a comment of what your favorite Shakespeare is, any moments in Shakespeare that speak out to you, what parts you'd want to play in Shakespeare. Leave us a comment so we can talk about it later. Do we have this recent photo of Antonio Banderas?
Got it. Here he is.
Oh, okay. Oh, happy 35th birthday, Antonio Banderas.
Joe says he doesn't look a day over 59.
I would agree. Papi Caliente right here. What do you think, Nicole? I think a solid 7. Solid 7. What do you think?
In terms of his looks? What are you asking me?
In your total feelings on Antonio Banderas, I feel a solid 7.
No, I think the accent brings him up to a solid 9, Dan.
Okay, so you're feeling more of the daddy love from Antonio Banderas.
Antonio's great. I would love to see him live in a musical.
Maybe not Company, but I would
he
agree.
could play one of the other husbands in Company. I'm not.
I heard
sure.
he was amazing in 9 as Guido Contini. I heard he was amazing.
Yeah.
I would have loved to have seen that.
Mm.
That would have been amazing. But beyond Antonio Banderas, we are going to be talking about a wonderful...
So Bobby is going through a 3/4 life crisis. That's fair.
Yes,
That's fair.
obviously. Oh, yes. Hello, Matt Rosenberg.
Hi, Matt.
Well, tonight we're going to have our usual things for you guys. We're going to have our book report, as well as EastLine news, as well as our big open debate. As much as we can sit here and talk about Antonio Banderas until the cows come home, we have to get to the news.
I mean, I could...
Edith O'Hara, the founder of the 13th Street Rep and one of the last doyens of the early off-Broadway movement, passed away last Friday at the age of 103. Could you imagine? In 1972, Edith O'Hara, former newspaper reporter and school teacher from Idaho, founded the 13th Street Repertory Theater at 50 West 13th Street as a place for actors, directors, playwrights, and designers to develop and create theater arts in a supportive environment. Sounds familiar. Her earliest productions in New York was Ken Long and Jim Krosner's musical Touch, whose score went on to earn a Grammy nomination. She championed one of the first productions on the subject of same-sex marriage with Bill Sally's and Donald Ward's Boy Meets Boy, which afterwards became a hit and moved to a commercial run. In 1974, she presented Israel Horowitz's expressionistic comedy Line, which famously went on to become the longest-running off-Broadway play in its history, as well as presenting 4 long-lost Tennessee Williams plays that were discovered in an archive in Texas in 2006. Quote, "It was like the Ellis Island for young artists arriving in New York," said Mr. Horowitz. "I don't think anyone expected a big break at the Rep, but maybe it was more valuable. No one was getting rich. We cleaned the toilets. But she made these young artists feel like they were real working artists in New York." In addition to presenting of new theater works, O'Hara had stressed the importance of entertaining young audiences and educating young artists. She spearheaded a program for young people called Mama Hare's Theater, which continues to this day as the Kid City Theater after-school musical program. For Edith O'Hara's leadership and artistic contribution, she has received citations from Barack Obama, Governor Andrew Cuomo, and Mayor Michael Bloomberg. When asked what she thinks was the accounting to her success, she would often say, quote, "If I thought I should do something, I just did it." 103, she passed away. Still doing theater, still making theater. She celebrated her centennial still as the artistic director of the theater. Isn't that incredible?
Wow, I wonder if one day I'm going to roll you in.
Well, but you know what? She lived the dream. She actually lived in the apartment above the theater. She literally lived above the theater. That's like my dream.
Okay, well, if you could die doing a show, what show would you be doing, Dan?
Oh, God. I don't know. Ask me after the news segment.
Comment down below. What show do you want to die doing?
Well, I think that kind of is a great segue into your news segment for the evening.
Yes, in a piece of news that Matt Rosenberg drew to my attention, and a bit of news that I feel is going to become more prevalent as we move into the holiday season, people get a bit more lax. The Firehouse Theater in Farmers Branch, Texas, has canceled the remaining performances of its musical review Back to the 80s, which was originally set to run until October 25th at an outside stage at the Sound at Cypress Waters. Few theaters in Dallas-Fort Worth have attempted live in-person productions with a full cast during the pandemic, and with good reason. One of the production members of Back to the 80s confirmed that there are currently 17 cases of coronavirus among the cast, band, crew, and Firehouse staff, with more results pending. The source, who wishes to remain anonymous, says that regular testing was never suggested by the directing team or anyone from Firehouse, and that social distancing or masks and PPE were not required during the rehearsal process or performances. The original idea was to keep the show blocked with social distancing in mind, and then let the cast come together for the finale and have them wear masks and gloves, says the source. The problem then was that over time, there was more and more blocking that was taught without social distancing in mind, with the knowledge and intention that the cast would not be wearing a mask or gloves for those scenes. A member of the band also contributed on Facebook. They went through the rehearsal process without problems. Same for the times the band was there. Masks all around, and everything felt good. When we moved to the outdoor venue, that's when everything changed. The large dressing room space, going down to the stage, on and off stage, no masks. Except the band. We were masked the entire time, from when we got to the venue to when we left. But whatever rules were in place for the cast stopped at that point. That is where the trouble was. No masks once they got to performance time. Production and promotional photos show the cast posed closely together with no form of personal protective equipment. Firehouse Executive Director David Moore and Artistic Director Derek Whitener have not responded to requests for comment. Actors Equity Association emailed a statement from Executive Director Mary McCall on October 23rd that reads, "Our hearts go out to the members of the cast and crew at Firehouse Theater. Just this recently, Equity put Firehouse Theater on its safety spotlight for refusing to use an equity safety plan and follow equity safety guidelines. Actors Equity has stated that the Firehouse Theater is no longer an equity producer, having abandoned their commitment to Actors Equity workplace safety rules that protect the audience and actors and stage manager." I mean,
not great, Bob.
Yeah. So, I mean, Matt has said, imagine getting COVID for a production of Back to the 80s. So how about tell us in the comments what production you absolutely would not get the coronavirus?
Yeah, well, some theaters want you to get COVID for a production of Back to the 80s.
I do somewhat fear this is going to be something that we continue to see as people get a bit lax with the rules, as people get tired of obeying.
Well, there is a fatigue, there is a pandemic fatigue that sets in. But the problem is that these theaters that take risks like this don't take the necessary precautions necessary to take a risk like this during a pandemic. It is in some way putting jeopardy everyone else's ability to return as well. So, these places that are going to take the risk and go out on the limb and come back, which, power to them. I can understand needing to pay for the electrical bill, but, at the same time, you might be making it more difficult in the long run for all of us to come back, especially if they, the state doesn't see that theaters should return because of such things, So it is a very, very tight kind of, walk to go down, I feel.
Absolutely, absolutely. And back to the 80s, man.
Yeah, back to the 80s. I didn't live in the 80s, and I know I don't want to go back, so there's that.
But we do have some safe theater events for you to take in from your home.
Yes, actually we do. We do have some online events. HBO has 2 theater-ish events on their streaming services that just got released this past week. The first is David Byrne's exploration into the American consciousness in American Utopia, directed by Spike Lee and filmed on Broadway at the Hudson Theater. Talking Heads fans will love this production for its companionship to Stop Making Sense. For those of you who are Talking Head fans, you'll know what I'm talking about. And theater people will be mystified by its hypnotic staging. So highly recommend. You guys should check it out. It's wonderful. Also, West Wing fans will adore and probably have already watched the West Wing special, The Benefit When We All Vote, taped at Los Angeles' iconic Orpheum Theater. This stage presentation of the show's Hartsfield's Landing episode stars core cast members Rob Lowe, Dule Hill, Allison Janney, Janelle Mooley, Richard Schiff, Bradley Whitford, and Martin Sheen reprising their unforgettable roles, along with a special guest star, Sterling K. Brown. Now, look, it's obviously impossible to replace John Spencer. John Spencer was Leo McGarry. He always will be, but Sterling K. Brown does an excellent job, I feel. So if you're a West Wing fan, you got to check it out. It's so good. You'll have all of the feels that you should be having. And I'm just going to say, bring it back. You willed Amelia into existence. I am going to wheel a reboot of West Wing into existence. Sam Seaborn 2020, bring it back.
I've never watched The West Wing.
Oh gosh, it's so. I'm a geek, and if Melanie's listening, I know you're out there. She's a geek too. West Wing is the best.
Maybe I'll finally have enough time to watch it. If you have lots of free time, you might want to watch The Prom. Netflix has released a new teaser trailer for their upcoming adaptation, due to be released on December 11th. Comment below if you saw the show when it was on Broadway. The film, directed by Ryan Murphy, features Meryl Streep, Nicole Kidman, James Corden, Andrew Reynolds, Ariana DeBose, and Kerry Washington. The musical follows 4 Broadway actors lamenting their days of fame as they travel to the conservative town of Edgewater, Indiana, to help a lesbian student band from bringing her girlfriend to the high school prom. Film features music by Matthew Sklar, lyrics by Chad Begulin, and a book by Bob Martin and Begulin, based on original concept by Jack Bertel. It's based on the true story of high schooler Constance McMillan, who was banned from her own high school prom. Did you see The Prom on Broadway, Dan?
Yes.
John Geffner did. John, did you like it? And Dan, did you like it? Were you a fan?
No.
Oh.
I was not a fan of The Godfather. I did not care for The Godfather. I felt that it left something to be desired.
Fair. Are you gonna watch the film anyway, though?
No.
No. Okay. Well, I was won over by the trailer. I was not especially hyped for it. I understood. None of the original Broadway cast is featured, so I do think that's a little awkward because the roles were written for them. So in this particular instance, it's a little strange. But I'm gonna watch it. I enjoyed the trailer. It was very polished, and I don't always love Ryan Murphy stuff, but I'm gonna watch it because the musical theater bug is bad.
I feel you. For that, I can understand that. The escapism is great.
Matt is watching for Andrew Reynolds.
Oh, come on.
John Gaffner loved it.
Reassess your tastes.
And Brian liked it.
It was a fun night. Oh, okay, he's going to drag me. But I'm going to say this right to Brian, okay? If they did one more beatbox, like, hip-hop pump move, like, the choreography was so repetitive, it drove me nuts.
Oh, one of those chest bump things? Is that what they did?
Yeah, it was
they pretend your heart was beating?
We're on the radio, so I can't demonstrate. But if I could demonstrate, I would look super dorky. Speaking of looking super dorky, that's my segue into our topic tonight, which is the Bard.
Still, this Congress refuses to grant any of my proposals on independence, even so much as the courtesy of open debate. Good God, what in hell are you waiting for? Thomas, for God's sake, listen to me. I had enough of you, sir. Now listen. Will you listen to me and forget the window?
So, we have a big chew tonight. No casual topic here at EastLine Insomnia. That's not how we roll. So yeah, we have a big topic, and just like ogres, it has layers, and all those layers in their own right deserve their own insomnia. But we will try to do as best as we can under the time constraints. So I'm going to start a little bit different here. So our topic tonight is, why are we still doing Shakespeare? So when I think about that question, I think it's actually appropriate to start at the end of the discussion where we're going to end up, because there's so many places you can go. So I'm going to start right at the roots here of what we're going to try to sort of dig out of this topic. And I'm going to start with this quote, which is a quote by Madeline Sayet from her article titled "Interrogating the Shakespeare System." And Nicole, I believe you'll be able to share that link with all of our listeners.
I'll post it in the comments right now.
It's a great article. Give it a read. But this quote stuck out to me specifically. Is Shakespeare a god? Whenever I hear people preach about the universalism of Shakespeare, the ways missionaries once wielded the Bible, I think to myself, this is dangerous. And yet it goes unquestioned, even though not everyone interprets his work the same way, and not everyone even likes it. So I think that's where we want to end up, but let's take a couple of steps back and let's start a little more broad. So, Nicole, why are we talking about Shakespeare tonight?
We are talking about Shakespeare because of a plethora of reasons. But when you and I sat down to plan out what our potential topics might be for a season 2, what each episode might lend itself to, Shakespeare was on the list because it has become so. I mean, even in normal times, Shakespeare is a big deal in American theater, especially. But during the pandemic, it has become it's just proliferated in all kinds of ways. I mean, I'm guilty of this myself. On Tuesday nights, I attend Larry Winkle's lovely Zoom Shakespeare group. If anyone wants to join, hit me up. I'll link you to the group. But every Tuesday night, we casually cold read a Shakespeare play. And it's not just us. It is there's lots of groups that are doing casually like us, or more formally in that they're presenting some kind of outward-facing presentation of a Shakespeare play. There are professionals. The Show Must Go Online is an ongoing. Every week they do a different Shakespeare play with professional actors. There are obviously things like the Globe has been releasing free productions. You can currently watch the Phillida Lloyd Tempest starring Harriet Walter on the St. Anne's Warehouse website. So it is absolutely a large thing at the moment. I think there are a lot of logistical reasons why this is the case.
I was about to ask, what do you think are some of the compelling arguments for these groups to be doing this?
I think logistically, the rights are obviously free. I mean, William Shakespeare is not collecting from beyond the grave. However,
We'll happily accept that money.
We will accept the rights on his behalf. You can donate your $100 per performance, which is comparable to what Drum His Play service charges. Facebook.com/EastLine Theater, hit donate, type 100.
You know, actually, Nicole,
enter your card info.
I think Shakespeare's worth at least 125 that they rob us for Neil Simon's. So
that's true. I think he probably sells as well as in Neil Simon. So you 125.
Do I hear 150? Anyone in the audience? 150? But you were saying, so what are some of these logistical reasons it's
so
free?
I think logistically it's free. I think logistically the script is easily obtainable from whatever your favorite source is, open source Shakespeare, Folger Shakespeare, whichever version you like is easily accessible. You can send a link to everyone on the internet who's doing it in every corner of the globe, and then you could all read together. So yeah, I think logistically, like it's, especially in the beginning of the pandemic, I can see why it was the first port of call for everyone. They said, "Oh, we can read a Midsummer Night's Dream live online." You know. Well,
before we get there, let me just ask you. So when did you start going to this group? Like, when did you start?
I think late May, maybe. So I've been doing it
since May. You've been reading a script a week.
I know. I'm also surprised at myself.
Do you have a favorite so far? Have you discovered a favorite?
So far? I mean, my favorite that we read in the group was probably Othello. I think I had the nicest time reading Othello because, I mean, as an actor, for obvious reasons, I got to read Desdemona in the last act. So, you know.
Oh, well, I was there for that. Your Desdemona was lovely.
It's a good part. It's a good part, you guys.
Folks out in the ether, what's your favorite Shakespeare? Let us know. But the reason I'm bringing this up is to sort of pivot to the sort of idea of going to this. So, like, since May, once a week, you have been attending a Shakespeare reading. Yeah.
Yep.
Now that's a commitment. You know, that's not.
I too am surprised. I too am surprised at myself.
I don't know you to be so committed. You're mostly a flake, but no. Thank you, everybody. Thank you. That's my closing argument.
Oh my god.
No, but seriously, why do you keep going back? Like, what is the compelling thing that's keeping you going every week? Not that there shouldn't be a reason, like, you know, I'm sure the people are lovely, but like, what is the
people are
reason?
Lovely. Hello to my Shakespeare friends. Not that you're listening. None of you listen to this.
You should.
Well, because Shakespeare people are a different breed, so this might not be their jam. This conversation, but
fair enough.
I keep going back. I think there's a part of me that's a completionist. You know, my heart says, if I go every week for 9 months or however long it's going to take, at the end, I will have read all the Shakespeare. And I think there's a part of me that's like, you can't criticize him until you've read them all, Nicole.
You need to know every single aspect of it before you could say he's trash.
Yeah. Although I say that, and I'm like, I don't remember what happens in Henry IV. We read Henry IV. I don't remember what happens.
Well, that shit's got 2 parts.
So can I criticize Henry IV even though I really don't remember anything about it?
Yeah.
Hope Larry's not listening.
I doubt it, but if he is, you run a lovely group, Larry.
Yes, I thoroughly enjoy going.
So this sort of completionist, this sort of checking off the list, you find it sort of soothing, like it's.
Yes.
I think there's a sort of like order to it. You know what I mean? Like, in a time of chaos, you're finding this like checklist that I don't know about people out there or you. I mean, yes, you, because you just said it. But like, I know that some of the most comforting things for someone with anxiety is to literally scribble things off a list. You know, it makes you feel like you're accomplishing something in that everything is organized. So
yes.
So maybe there's like a psychological element involved in this. I mean,
yes, and I wonder if perhaps that applies to the time we live in as well, the pandemic. Like,
well, yeah.
Do you think that people have flocked to Shakespeare because?
Oh, yeah. I mean,
because of the strife.
I mean, it makes sense. You know what I mean? Like, if you think about it, we're all people, not just theater people, but our form in specifically is going through a sort of upheaval. We're all feeling it at the same time, and you know, I think, you know, in the now times, we sort of latch on to sort of the easiest accessible catharsis. And I mean, to a lot of people, for many reasons, which we'll get to, but I think for a lot of people, that first level of catharsis is Shakespeare. That at the top of the barrel of all the options available to them, the first one they're gonna latch onto is Shakespeare. Now, I think there's a number of reasons in this. I think one, there is this sort of, you can perform, You know what I mean? Where modern drama is in some instances more subdued. You don't get to be acting with a capital A.
Yeah.
So as far as a idea of a emotion of catharsis, Shakespeare allows you to sort of unleash anything you have inside you. But
Yeah.
I also think that maybe possibly there might be some relatability to the characters in Shakespeare. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think that Brian Doherty explores this in his Theater of War that I feel like I've mentioned before on here. But it's a program.
It's a great book.
It's a program he runs with people who've experienced some kind of trauma, say veterans returning from war or frontline medical staff or what have you. And he runs a sort of they do excerpts of a play, and then there's a led discussion where you discuss it in relation to yourself. So, for example, he's currently running the King Lear project, where he deals with like caretakers and frontline medical staff, and talks about like within the play, the sort of caretaking of King Lear and how that might relate to our modern day caretakers, etc. So I think that there is definitely catharsis is definitely part of it. People definitely do approach it. I mean, he also deals in Greek drama as well, which we stan around here.
Yes, of course we do.
He started with Greek drama, but now he also works with Shakespeare. But I think it's available in both because of the archetypal nature of the stories in Greek drama and Shakespeare.
Well, I also think that sort of Shakespeare, like Greek drama, I personally think Greek drama is better at this because it's more, I think, streamlined. It's more to the point, whereas Shakespeare meanders for acts. Sometimes.
Yeah, I would say Greek drama is like almost solely about the big emotion about the thing that happened.
Well, giving the excuse for the audience to emote.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I think that's what people want right now is this sort of excuse to sort of let their guard down and maybe cry or scream or laugh or these things that they're sort of, holding fast inside them, if that makes any sense.
Dan, I know you were easily verklempt. Can you tell me about a moment in Shakespeare when you got verklempt? And this is commenters as well. Tell me about a time you saw a Shakespeare play and you got verklempt.
Oh gosh, that's a broad side. Moment in Shakespeare where I felt verklempt. I mean, again, I'm gonna stand King Lear this entire podcast today, but to me, King Lear bringing in Cordelia, in his arms, howl, there's that to me every time it happens. That's like, oof, it gets you, man. Especially if it's done right. Like you get the right lighting, the right actor, the right dead body. That shit's great. That shit's so good. Like put that right in my veins. That shit will make me cry on the beat. Do you have one? Do you have a?
I don't know if
Shakespeare moment.
I don't know if I've ever really gotten verklempt at Shakespeare, to be honest with you.
Interesting.
I get verklempt at Greek tragedy, and I get very easily verklempt at modern drama as well, but I don't know about Shakespeare. I don't know. Well, let's
dive into this a little bit deeper here. So yeah, we were talking about this catharsis. We're talking about this this excuse. That's the word I'm looking for. This excuse to sort of emote. But I think let's talk about the reason why we go to Shakespeare first, as opposed to other sort of options available to us. Like, why do you think we first go to Shakespeare?
I was going to say, in addition to catharsis, there is an element of nostalgia in Shakespeare.
Yeah.
Almost like, I don't know, during the Great Depression, people flocked to be entertained by Fred Astaire or Shirley Temple or whatever. And I think that there's that element of escapism to Shakespeare. Like people can relate to elements of it, but I don't feel like anybody feels like, oh, my life right now is exactly like Romeo and Juliet. I live like Romeo. I live like in Verona in the 1500s. Like,
I don't know about you, Nicole. I don't know about you, but I am often going to masquerades and then helping my best friend find a star-crossed lover and then dying and wishing plague on both houses. I don't know about you.
So I think it's escapism, and then of course nostalgia, because these are things that we're familiar with.
Interesting.
The actual plays themselves, because we studied some in high school, and the archetypes featured in the plays.
Yeah, well, I would say that familiarity is presented to us at an early age, and that's part of the reason why that I would say we first reach for Shakespeare, is because that nostalgia sort of brings us back to probably what might be most of our first sort of baby steps into the sort of theater canon, which was probably presented to us in our freshman English classes. I mean, I don't know if you've read plays in grammar school. I mean, I did, but I'm also a weirdo. But like, I know that one of the first real times in a classroom that I studied the theater art form was my freshman year. We studied Romeo and Juliet. It was the first thing we did.
Yeah, so Romeo and Juliet was the first full-length Shakespeare play I read for sure in freshman year. But I not to go on a tangent, but I was actually minorly familiar with Shakespeare before high school, before I read an actual full-length Shakespeare play, because I read a book called Tales from Shakespeare by Charles and Mary Lamb, and I'm about to go off on a serious tangent, but it's just entered my mind, and I need to tell everyone on the internet. Charles and Mary Lamb were not husband and wife, as their names imply. They were in fact siblings, and they wrote the book together after Mary Lamb killed their mother.
Wow! Write that musical, John Brodigan. I'd watch that every day.
So
it's funny you mention that, because I actually my first memory of the word Shakespeare probably came from Shakespeare in Love when I watched it as a kid.
Okay.
It was on like, I don't know, like channel whatever, but like, so
TNT, TBS.
the before Netflix times when you had to see what was on HBO. But what else did you read in high school? Like, as far as theater is concerned, what else did you guys read?
I probably only read, I think I read like 6 plays in high school. So 9th grade, I read Romeo and Juliet. 10th grade, I read the Scottish play. 11th grade, well, we were supposed to read Othello, but we just watched the movie. And then
streamline that.
Don't say, oh, like that's nice.
No, I meant like, oh, like let's just not, like, I'm not even going to bother. Let's just put on the videotape. The substitute teacher of all high school theaters.
It was like, read it at home. I mean, in his defense, we ran out of time because instead we read a modern play. We read Streetcar Named Desire. Oh. And then 12th grade, we read Hamlet. And we also read we juxtaposed it with Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Are Dead.
You guys read Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Are Dead? And I guess that makes sense.
Well, it was AP English, not to toot my own horn.
Not to toot my Regents degree, but
can people comment down below what plays they read in high school, Shakespeare and non-Shakespeare? I'm just curious.
Yeah, let us know.
Because I think it's somewhat standardized across New York State, but I'm not positive.
Well, I mean, like,
when did you read yours? What did you read?
I went to a private school, a Catholic institution. I still have the ruler scars to prove it. No. Oh my gosh. Can't believe I just said that. Change the topic, Dan. Change the topic. No, but in all seriousness, we read Romeo and Juliet in freshman year. We read the Scottish play in sophomore year. There was a Midsummer was read at some point. But again, I had a different education because I had a theater program that provided theater courses, and in those theater courses, we also read Greeks, we read Miller. You know, I mean, freshman year we read Oedipus at the same time I was reading Julius Caesar. Why did I say that? As Romeo and Juliet. So I think I had a much different approach towards theater as far as my high school education was concerned. I mean, my junior year we didn't even read Shakespeare. My junior year teacher taught us 2 Williams. We read Glass Menagerie, and then Streetcar Named Desire. So, I had a much different approach to it. But, still, the first thing, before we read Oedipus, I read Romeo and Juliet. That was the first thing we read, and it was my sort of introduction to sort of critical thinking of theater, because that's how it was presented,
Yeah, it looks like a lot of people read Romeo and Juliet 9th grade. Matt did. Kyle did.
Julius Caesar, okay.
We had one Julius Caesar there.
Interesting.
Brian also said Romeo and Juliet. And what does that say? One Flew
Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
Wait, you read the play version?
You read the play instead of the book?
Well, that's weird.
It is weird.
And
Suffolk.
Classic Crucible. Did you say
the answer to that is Suffolk. Yeah.
I was in Suffolk.
Yeah, but he's further Suffolk. You're
true.
like Nassau Suffolk. He's like West Virginian Suffolk.
Did anybody read anything other than like a Tennessee Williams or an Arthur Miller play? I'm just curious. Oedipus, actually. We read Oedipus in 10th grade as well, Brian said.
Okay, interesting.
I'm just curious if anybody read any plays that were not those.
But
sorry, go ahead.
No, let's dive into this a little bit deeper here. So like I just mentioned, it seems almost everyone's here. We can relate easily to Romeo and Juliet, as sort of these sort of opening steps presented to us to critically thinking about theater. How do you feel about that? Do you feel that sort of might stifle our ways of viewing theater? It might maybe pigeonhole us?
I am distressed at the lack of modern drama on the curriculum. I probably, some schools read like Raisin in the Sun, maybe. But there are definitely plays I think schools should be reading. They should be reading at least one modern play. So I read 6 or 7 plays, and 4 of them were Shakespeare. I don't know why we're reading such a majority of the plays I read in high school were by Shakespeare. I think that's too many.
That is too many.
If we're not going to read any by any women, none by people of color. I just think that I'm not sure why they are leaning so heavily into that. And I feel bad, and I wonder if there are some people who never get into theater because they feel like that's the only sort of thing they see.
Well, I think there is an appeal to some extent. I think if you're a theater person, there is some appeal to the way you have to perform Shakespeare.
Yeah.
But as far as like the average student goes, I think if we started everyone off with like something as easily accessible as sort of like Glass Menagerie, we'd be able to, I think, break newer ground, deeper ground. And, not that Shakespeare shouldn't be taught, but that it shouldn't be the only thing taught. Same thing with, I think, Miller and all those other, if you start with something even more modern, something people can relate to immediately and sort of really grasp what the theater medium is, I think you could convince a lot more people to take theater more seriously and maybe even be connoisseurs of theater more seriously.
There's one. Matt says he read Raisin in the Sun.
Raisin in the Sun. I read that. Yeah, that was junior year for me.
Honestly, I think it could be a benefit because you could read more quickly plays than you could read novels.
True.
And I obviously there is value in reading novels as well, but I think that theater is such maybe I'm biased, but I do think we should be introducing students more to theater than we are currently. But I think that a lot of people, their tastes form in high school, and if the only theater you're introduced to in high school is Shakespeare, it may not be something you ever take to. Like a lot of people today point to like To Kill a Mockingbird as like their favorite novel of all time, and it's usually wouldn't you agree? A lot of people would say that, and
I would say it's my mother's favorite novel.
It's because they read it in high school and they read it at a formative time in their life, and there's nothing bad about that. But I think maybe more people could say that about theater if they read more widely about theater in high school, the way they read slightly more widely about it in novels.
I agree.
But why do you think that is? I mean, I have some of my own opinions about why for example, I think Shakespeare really appeals to actors and people who are natural actors, even if they were just actors in the sense of in their high school class, as opposed to in real life. But I don't really see the appeal in Shakespeare for audiences because listening to the text is not the same as being able to chew into the text as an actor. So I can see why actors like to perform it. Shakespeare gives a lot for actors to work with.
I would agree.
But I don't necessarily see it for audience members, and maybe that's why not everybody is immediately taken in by it.
Well, they have to be sort of, persuaded. They have to be.
Well, is there a Shakespeare that persuaded you?
It's the story I always tell, which I guess here we go. While I have this tangent, comment below what Shakespeare convinced you, if there was any. So part of my education was that my high school theater department ran a trip to the West End every 2 years for juniors and seniors, and I had the privilege of going. Part of this is problematic because, we get to the West End and this whole idea, of bringing theater kids to another culture to see theater should be sort of about this idea of expanding one's sort of palette into that. And instead, we saw 4 productions while we were there. One was Love Never Dies. The other was Billy Elliot, which was running on Broadway the time we went, and Legally Blonde. But so, that sort of speaks for itself on sort of why did we spend all this money to go to the West End to see stuff we could probably just see on Broadway. But the one thing that they sort of did was they did this full day excursion to Stratford upon Avon. We got on a bus, we went the whole way out there to see the house, to, I don't know, to pay homage, to prostrate ourselves like good Catholics on the altar of Shakespeare, and then to see a Royal Shakespeare Company production that evening, which was King Lear, which happened to be a very formative moment in my development as an artist. It was the production that made me want to be a theater artist, and I would say it was, this production of sitting in the Royal Shakespeare Company as Lear howls in the wind and it's raining on stage and the wind is blowing. I mean, because the Royal Shakespeare Company got more money than God, so there's an actual wind current in the theater, and it mystified me, physically and mentally, and I left that theater not only having an interest in Shakespeare, but also an interest deeper in theater than I already had, which we can get to a little bit later. But I would say that was probably the moment that convinced me of taking Shakespeare a little more seriously than maybe just a English test. But what about you? Did you have any sort of formative moment with Shakespeare? Any sort of breakthrough?
I don't know if I'm yet convinced, but if there's one moment that I think will have convinced me one day, I saw a production of Hamlet done by a woman named Emily Carding. She does a one-woman Hamlet. She also does a one-woman Richard III that I'm desperate to see. But I dragged my ass to Soho, the Soho Playhouse. Yes, Soho Playhouse.
Yeah.
And I didn't pay very much for the ticket, but it was raining. It was cold. I dragged my ass downtown. I was like, God, I don't want to go to Penn Station right now, but I did. And basically everyone sat on stage in a circle around her, and she did one woman Hamlet. And first of all, because it was just like a circle of an audience, she was able to deliver the lines directly to people, directly to audience members. And it just, I don't know if you really get it till like someone is saying it to your face.
Yeah.
But also, so the audience played the rest of the characters within the piece. So like she had somebody play Polonius and she stabbed them. And I mean, maybe I'm biased. I played Ophelia. So at the end, when I died, I like tore the instructions in the script read to tear up the script into strips of paper and then roll them into like flowers, roses. And then hand them out to the audience, and then I died in the middle of stage. So maybe the ending was bad. I didn't see the ending. I was dead on stage. But the way she was able, almost the claustrophobia of the piece, and the way she was able to deliver the lines with such intensity directly at audience members was just I got it. I got it in that moment, and that's why I've seen her perform since at the Edinburgh Fringe. I saw her do Caliban, and I would watch her do Richard III because, to me, that's what makes Shakespeare relatable and accessible, is adaptation of Shakespeare, which I don't necessarily think we're doing enough adaptation of Shakespeare. We're relying too much on trying to create traditional productions, and I don't believe you can do a traditional production of Shakespeare. There's no such thing.
Yeah, but
because we don't really know what it looked like, and we're just trying to recreate it, but you're never going to be able to recreate it. So what is the point in trying that?
I mean, I agree with you 100%. I mean, and that kind of goes back into the catharsis idea, which is that, Greeks, I feel, have this sort of lasting power millennia later because they continue to be adapted, whereas Shakespeare sort of is kind of crammed into this sort of period piece sort of aesthetic to the way it's presented, and even the way it's structured, and like, the fact that people do it unabridged, and are proud of that and whatever. But like, for example, like I've seen 4 productions of Othello, right? One of which was in Central Park, which did it with poofy pants and hats, which to me makes no sense at all. Because who can relate to that? And then on the other end of the spectrum, the 3 other productions I've seen all did it in battle fatigues. Like, if I have to see one more Othello with battle fatigues, I'm gonna strangle myself. It's like, why is this the limit of adaptation that we've allowed ourselves with Shakespeare? Why is it like, unheard of to sort of do something new with the text, go beyond the text? Like, it's not sacred. So why do we treat it that way?
However, I am interested in Brian mentions Death by Fluffy Kittens done at the New York Renaissance Fair.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
I assume that is some kind of adaptation. Is that an adaptation?
Yes. So basically, the New York Ren Fair has a Shakespeare, William Shakespeare guy who does sort of shorter 45-minute versions of Shakespeare's, and one of them is the Scottish play or Death by Fluffy Kittens. And it literally is this sort of family-friendly 45-minute Scottish play with all of these props and audience participation. And when every character dies, the rest of the actors on stage pelt the dying person with literal beanie babies of kittens. It's hilarious. But yes, so like that is the perfect example. You know, that makes something more approachable and more understandable, and we can relate to it. It also helps us learn a little bit more. You know what I'm saying? And you know, it goes all the way back to the sort of educational value of Shakespeare. You know, if it is educational, then why aren't we sort of acting that way?
Well, is it educational? That is the question, isn't it?
Well, that is the big question. You know, which I guess leads me to the sort of more bigger, the big question that we led this discussion with, Nicole, which is, why are we still doing Shakespeare? You know,
well,
why?
I mean, Kyle ripped my answer before. Let me pull it up.
Really?
Because he was a white man who other white men thought was worth preserving, amongst other reasons.
Well, that is the exact reason.
Yes.
I mean, if you look at the beginning of the first folio, that is literally what they say. So
yes, I do think that this is certainly part of it, and I am not sure why we have privileged Shakespeare over other historic playwrights. I think that there are other historic playwrights that we're not giving their due.
Yeah.
And I think there is value in revival. I think there is value in studying the grand breadth of what theater has been in the past and what it could be. But I think that sometimes we are ignoring it at the expense of just in order to produce more Shakespeare. And like, there are commercial reasons for that, of course.
Yeah.
But I do wish we would reach into the past and do a bit more of anything else.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that the core reason, and the gloves are going to come off now, but that's just sort of how I roll, is there's an elitism to Shakespeare that I think people enjoy. And it's twofold, I feel. One is that it is easy to make it sort of competition based. So like, think about it in the essence of, you have to learn how to perform Shakespeare. Okay. Like, you don't have to learn how to do a Greek drama. No one talks like that. You know, no, you don't have to learn how to do a Williams beyond just general acting, but Shakespeare has its special form. You have to learn that special form, which means that there can be people that say they are the best at it, or that they can point to it and say, I can do this and you're doing it wrong. So I think there is this sort of brown-nosing ability that people enjoy to Shakespeare, that they can say they do something better than someone else, and they like to use that to sort of keep other people down. I also think there's the elitism in the sense of the way that people sort of treat Shakespeare. You know, it's in the same sort of context of, I'm going to the opera, I go to the ballet, I enjoy a good Shakespeare. You know, there's this sort of like, I feel like it gives them status, which is so different. It's antithetical to what Shakespeare was writing and who he was writing for. Okay, Shakespeare was literally the dirt. Okay, they literally, back in those days, they were called actors, and that was not a good thing. And that's the whole point. And that we now sort of embody this sort of fa aspect to the way that Shakespeare is presented and why we do it. I mean, perfect example. I've seen every major production of King Lear that's come to New York, okay? Sort of what I do. It's like my religious thing, okay? I just go and see it because it's my favorite, so I see it. There was this one that came to the Brooklyn Academy of Music that was starring Frank Langella, which, I mean, come on, that shit sounds great. But I couldn't go to see it. Why couldn't I see it? Because the back row ticket was $300. Like, that's not, you're making this excuse, okay, that there is this universality to Shakespeare and that it's educational, but then only certain people can afford it, and it's only performed by certain types of people, and it only tells stories of other certain types of people. That's not universal. That's not educational. What that is it's purporting a system. It's purporting an elitism that I think is completely opposite to what theater is at its core. So I personally think what we need to do as a sort of, I mean, culture, I guess is a larger word, but, you know, as a community, is sort of reevaluate where we play Shakespeare and why Shakespeare is there, and maybe make room for some other things that could include and be a part of more people. Because if you don't, you're just going to continue to alienate people. And I just think that's not the correct way we want to approach our form.
I agree. Yeah. John says, what about staging stuff by contemporaries for context and comparison? I think contemporaries, yes. And also the other thousands and thousands of years of theater history that we're ignoring. Absolutely ignoring.
I agree with you.
Theater does not start with Shakespeare, and it does not end with Shakespeare.
And you know what? I'm going to say this, you know, I mean, you know, and then if you go all the way back to the sort of educational aspect, right? If we're at the very beginning, at the very beginning of the of people's development and their critical thinking of theater, you present them Shakespeare and then tell them this is the highest form, this is the height. These people aren't going past the foyer. They haven't even taken off their shoes. You know what I mean? And it's also to think like theater isn't a 4-story house. There's not like a top. You know, it's a ground level art form, and there are so many rooms and so many nooks and so many crannies. And the point is to see all of it. And yet you present them Shakespeare at the beginning and say nothing is better than this. Then they don't progress any further and look. I think it's doing these people a disservice.
That's true. That's very true.
So to wrap this up, Nicole.
Yes.
Do you like Shakespeare?
No, don't ask me that.
I'm asking you it. I'm holding you an answer. You're not going to flake on me. Do you like Shakespeare?
Can you answer first, and then I'll answer?
I like Shakespeare. Yes. I mean, I just gave a litany of reasons in my and I look. I'm not going to get verklempt on radio, but I probably will. Is
you
that
always get verklempt.
But you know, if I could live one moment for the rest of my life on repeat, it would have been, I would like to be that 17-year-old kid sitting in the Royal Shakespeare Company as the storm whipped about him, and in that moment he felt like the heavens had opened up and that it reached out a hand and told you, here, this is where you belong and this is what you need to do with the rest of your life. And for that, I will always be indebted to Shakespeare and to King Lear. I will always have my issues with Shakespeare. I will, but I also went into it with a mentality of wanting to see as many different types of theater and the breadth of what theater can be, because I want other people to have the moment I had, and it's all about giving people that moment. So I like Shakespeare, but I'm biased.
So I do not like Shakespeare the way you like Shakespeare. I enjoy reading Shakespeare on a Tuesday night with people that are fun and absolutely blow up the chat on the side. But I think that those moments can be found in other theater as well. Yeah. And that storm could have easily been from the play we read for Book Report today.
That is true. So, time for Book Report, but before we do, let us know what you guys think so we can talk about it on the other side. Time for Book Report.
A book report on Peter Rabbit, Peter Rabbit, report on Peter Rabbit. A book report on Peter Rabbit. Peter Rabbit is a stupid book about the stupid rabbit who steals vegetables from other people's gardens. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. 83 to go.
So, Nicole, what did we read this week?
Well, you can see it right there on your screen. We read The Great Wave by Frances Turnley. It was a play that was on at the National Theatre in 2018. Real quick, the easy synopsis of the play is that it's about two sisters who one night, one presumably gets washed away by the ocean next to their home. But you learn, of course, that is not what happened. She didn't just get washed away.
And you have to read to find out.
I guess that's very early in the play, so I probably could go past that. But
but it's fine.
I would prefer that you go into this.
With an open mind.
What did you think, Dan?
I thought it was excellent. This is not your casual read, I would say, first and foremost. It is long. Wrong word. It is epic. And that is what makes it so good. I mean, it's 2 parts, not 2 acts. And I really think people who read it should treat it that way. It's a good rainy day book to pick up and read both parts and like give yourself a dinner break or something of that nature. But I do think just the way that the story is told and the way that the characters are sort of completely, fleshed out and brought to an absolutely solid conclusion. I mean, I actually think it's some of the best material I've read so far of our book reports. I think it's excellent and I highly recommend it. Yes,
I think the length of it lends the events of the story weight. And so the specific historical event that it is clearly based around, it's fictitious, but it's based around true-ish events. I think the length of it lends weight to that, and it really does feel like an epic. And the relationship between the two sisters is wonderful, and all of the characters has a real arc in the story. And I really, again, like Dan, I highly recommend it.
What are we reading next week, Nicole?
we are reading it's our special Halloween episode.
That's right, spooky edition next week.
Woohoo! So we thought we would read Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. This is a play adaptation by Rona Munro. Are you looking forward to it?
Yes, I am. From what people have some real Frankenstein opinions, but we'll save that. We'll save that for the next book report.
Come with your Frankenstein opinions.
We'd love to chat. But before we wrap this up, we have to give some attention to tonight's bootleg.
Wunderbar, wunderbar, here alone and hand in glove. Not a cloud near or far. Why, it's more than wunderbar. Say you can't, dear. For you madly. Say you long again. For your kiss. Do you swear, dear? Darling, gladly. Like slip away, dear. And you're mine, dear. Wunderbar, wunderbar. There's a favorite star above. What a bright, shining star. Like your love, it's wunderbar. And you're mine. Wunderbar, wunderbar. There's a favorite star above. What a bright, shining star. Like our love, it's
Is there better casting? Argue.
Marin and Stokes, man. Marin and Stokes, the only
Classic.
wunderbar. That is Shakespeare adjacent, by the way, for anyone who doesn't know. It's from Kiss Me Kate, which is based on The Taming of the Shrew. That's why we shared it.
Yeah.
We do a few comments to catch up on before we non sequiturs from before we get to our final EastLine news of the
go
night.
for
Kyle says he really loved Antonio Banderas as the dad in Spider. And then,
I mean, classic.
And then, of course, we had this from Melanie,
Oh, hello, Melanie.
who was mad that I had never seen The West Wing.
Oh, God. I mean, come on. West Wing stands. Let's represent. Come on. Fill the comments.
And then, of course, John said The Prom was better than Pretty Women. Fair. Everything was better than Pretty Women.
I think, yeah.
And then, Joe, I gave up on Glee after a season and a half, so I'm going to pass on The Prom. I feel you on Ryan Murphy, Nicole. Thank you. Ryan Murphy is truly terrible.
We'll save those opinions for another night. We have some EastLine news we have to get to before we wrap this mother up. So we just announced a big thing, did we not, Nicole?
We did. We announced something called the Muse Anthology, which is a collaborative devised project. We've gathered together some of EastLine's brightest and best, including Kyle's, who's in the comments. Kyle's doing one. Basically, the anthology is each person was assigned a different ancient Greek muse, like Terpsichore, Urania, and each of the muses represents a different thing, like astronomy or dance or music or what have you. So they've each been assigned one, and they're building a project around that muse. So currently they are looking for performers of all different kinds to be featured in the projects. They are, there's a Google form that you can fill out if you go to facebook.com/EastLine Theater. The pinned post is the Google form, so you can fill out some basic information like your name, your email, your resume, your headshot, etc. And then our crack team of EastLine Muse people will be in touch if they want you to appear in their project.
Yes, super excited.
What else is going on, Dan?
Well, of course, tomorrow we have our next installment, Environmental Elegies, which is our curated poem series, which is going to feature the incorrigible Patrick Finn reading a wonderful poem. So we hope you guys will check that out tomorrow and enjoy some meditative Long Island nature imagery. And we have our usual weekly things still going on. Yes, Nicole?
We do. We have book club, my favorite, Sunday night at 7. I could talk. Oh, it's very late, so I should not talk too long about the Dybbuk. But I want to tell you the Dybbuk is great. We're going to be reading it Sunday night at 7. We usually divide it up the parts around 7:10, 7:15. So trying to turn up on time because the Dybbuk is a little bit long. But it's an iconic Yiddish play. We picked this spooky just for Halloween. It's basically about demon possession. There's an exorcism scene. There's a spooky wedding dance. It's so good, you guys. I love it. You can find out all the information you need in the EastLine Book Club group. I'm about to post it in the comments down below.
And if you join that book club group, you can notice that every other week we run Movie Club, which is we do a streaming service and watch a filmed stage production. This coming week, just for the spooky season, along with the Dybbuk for this Sunday, we'll be attending The Tale of Sweeney Todd, featuring Angela Lansbury and not Angela Lansbury. And it will be absolutely spectacular. We hope you guys will join us for some nice spooky Sondheim. When's our next episode, Nicole?
You're, of course, back here a week from tonight. That's Friday at 11:59 p.m. And it's our special Halloween episode. And I think we have some special guests.
Yes, we do. We have some wonderful special guests, Nicole.
They are Jocelyn Morton. She's going to appear on the show next Friday night, as well as somebody who's in the comments right now. Brian Bowie is going to be here next Friday to talk all about Broadway's best villains.
It's going to be Halloween. A fun time. We hope you guys will join us and get our spook on. Right before we go, Nicole, we have to do our non sequitur, of course. Yes, we do have to do our non sequitur. Don't you. Okay, ready, Nicole? It's a question.
Okay.
How many popes does the Vatican have per square mile?
Per square mile. Okay, the joint's small, so it's probably a square mile. There are 2 popes currently, so 2.
The answer is 5.9 per square mile.
Excuse me.
Because
how could you have 0.9 popes? 0.9 popes.
5.9 popes. And that's because technically the Vatican is only 0.25 square miles. So in relation, there are 5.9 popes per square mile.
I mean, I guess the math works out, but
I thought this was appropriate.
But only one of the 5.9 popes is the gay pope. Thanks,
yes,
Santa.
I am. I don't know if everyone heard the news, but Francis Ford Coppola came out today this week, and The Godfather is the queer epic we didn't know about. Everyone. On that note, for those that don't know me, my name is Daniel Higgins.
I'm Nicole Saban. Keep your opinions to yourself.
We'll see you guys next week. Please just.